Wow. That is so interesting.
It's not like a bad thing or that it is bad, but he's a really private person. And I at first thought that he wasn't even going to, so I was under contract 4 times. It was like, I can get into that and whatever. But he was a very like to the point, total opposite personality of me and just wanted everything super private. So it's like, all right, I'll respect that.
But how did you find him?
I actively found a buyer. So I always had people tell me, oh, you're not going to sell. It's not worth selling, or, just move on to the next thing. But when I was doing that company, I was coaching founders on the side because I won 22 of 23 pitches to fund my first company. So pitching was my superpower without realizing it first.
Mm-hmm.
FedEx posted my top pitch tips on their YouTube and it went viral. So I had hundreds of founders messaging me, how do you tell your story? You raise capital. What's your fundraising strategy? All those things. And so I was coaching founders on the side and it exploded. And I realized that I wasn't happy in running the first company as much as I was in coaching founders and that level of impact. And I was on Good Morning America 4 times. Like I was doing big things with the company, but still felt this level of this isn't me anymore. I have other skill sets that I'd like to tap into deeper.
Mm-hmm.
So I found an e-commerce specific broker and I said, these are my things. They helped, organize the books, source buyers based on my criteria and the works, and set up a bunch of meetings, and that's how it went. So it wasn't like, oh, I emailed my competitors, hey, I'm looking or whatever. It was specific individuals looking to acquire businesses and then further grow them.
Why did you start your first company?
Totally on accident. I like to say I'm a 2-time accidental founder.
This is
so I started the first company in college. I wanted to go into medicine, and then I had my valuables stolen out of my gym locker. So I thought, I don't want to be a fanny pack girl. I had this idea for a wearable wrist wallet. My mom had a bridal store at the time, so I talked to her seamstress and I said, I want this, this, and this. And we made my first prototype right there. And when I went back to school, I had all these people asking me, hey, I want one to go to the gym and bar hop and tailgate. And people were knocking on my dorm room door. Hey, can you make me one of those? So I started making more at our shop and it totally took off. I was just on Etsy. I had no idea what I was doing. Literally no idea. My investment, my personal investment in the company was a $70 pair of leggings from a TJ Maxx, like an extra large pair, because I didn't want to buy a full roll of fabric thinking that this would go anywhere.
Yeah.
And literally cut out the leggings on, like the piece of the leggings on the fabric to then create the first prototype. And that was my investment, air quote.
So it took off. And then what did you do after that?
I was making them at our bridal store. I would come home on weekends. She taught me how to sew and do all these things. And then I was paying her to help a little bit more. And it was unusual in the sense that, so I was using her sewing machines for free and all the materials, which is awesome. But then probably not even a few months after I started the business and it, slowly starting to build and I was being scrappy, my mom lost her store to a fire. She had her business of 26 years completely burned to the ground.
Oh no.
All my materials, prototypes, everything, sewing machines I was using for free were all in there. I had no money. I was playing tennis for school. That was my job. I was on scholarship. And so one of my professors said, hey, you should enter a pitch competition. I was like, what's that? I didn't even know what entrepreneur was at the time.
Yeah.
And he just said, you go up, you talk about your business and what you would do if you won. And no one told me how to structure it. I was so nervous and nauseous when I actually arrived that I almost left. But I ended up winning the 2 out of the 2 pitch opportunities. And that was $7,500 to start and rebuild.
Yeah.
And then I found a mentor in a non-competitive space who was manufacturing overseas. And they said, we love what you're doing. We'll vet you. Well, because their minimum runs were 100,000 pieces a month. I couldn't do that.
Yeah,
but
no way.
I didn't have a factory anymore here. And I tried finding US and it was so expensive. Like no one was going to pay this amount. And they were bringing the textile from China anyways. So why would I, go both ways? And they vetted me and brought in my first, 1,000-piece batch. Then it was 5,000-piece batch. Then it was 10,000. And without that mentor, I would not have gone as fast as I did. But then I did one pitch competition after the other because I realized these same things worked over and over and over again. And it was super exciting.
So many people, I'm sitting here and I'm like, so many people would kind of pay to have those opportunities. What do you think you did differently to attract those opportunities and put yourself in a situation to do a pitch contest and have this business and things just kind of move very quickly for you?
Yeah, at first, I was pretty burnt out. Like, it sounds so easy, you're going to go after all these things. But, before I switched to entrepreneurship, I was taking organic chemistry. I was sleeping 4 hours a night. I was practicing tennis and then I was talking to suppliers at midnight and 1 a.m. to figure out these batches because that's when they're up overseas.
Yeah.
And so I was super exhausted, but I made sure that I was good with asking for help when I needed it. I knew I didn't learn anything. So I was open, like actively learning. I think I like to think of myself as a lifelong learner. So I'm going to ask anyone and everyone I can. I went after mentors in non-competitive spaces. I engaged with every local startup organization that when I found what the word startup was,
Yeah.
I went and found all those local organizations. I got involved in the entrepreneurship board at the school. They ended up having a budget to fly me to more pitch competitions and do that. So no one would come to the table and asking me what I needed or what to do. So I actively kept having to ask and put myself out there and be okay with the no's. So I think it was, learning and being active in that sense, taking the time and adjust my, learning to prioritize. That was so big because it was, all right, how much am I going to spend in school? How much am I going to spend on tennis? How much running the business? Oh, and then I got to eat dinner. There was, all these things in between where it goes by super fast. So prioritizing, saying yes and no to the right things, which took a lot of time to figure out what was right or not. And then also being transparent in the process on social media because it was free. And I'd post, hey, I'm at these markets and doing all these things, and that helped grow and people share. And, getting, at first it was little orders from family and friends, and the family would tell other family because they thought it was cool. So not being ashamed of, hey, the product isn't perfect, but still open to share it. I know that was a lot, but I could talk about, forever, all these little different parts that added up to the big picture. It wasn't just, one moment, or it was absolutely not an overnight success.
It's important to understand because we're fast paced. And I think any entrepreneur is always, in my mind, moves like at a mile a minute or is trying to achieve this next thing. And that's just one thing I've learned even with building the podcast. Like, it just starts off so slow, but I think it's knowing when to capitalize on opportunities and knowing which opportunities to capitalize on. And I think you were so young that you probably, you had an influx of opportunities, but I think when you're young, you're fighting the battle of age. And I know for me, like, I'm only 26, but it's like, oh, you're only 26. Like, what do you know? And it's like, you're fighting that battle as well as trying to be eager and try to go after things. And it's like, the only way to learn is by doing. There's no other way. And especially in entrepreneurship, like, you can read Gino Wickman's books, but it's not going to get you all the knowledge that you need to get something off the ground and really get it moving.
Oh, yeah. And even still now with my second company, like, I love failing at something because then I could check off that box of, hey, that didn't work. Now I can go try something else. And that was so important to not get discouraged because, it sounds awesome that I won all of these pitches, but you didn't see me behind the scenes practicing 100+ times to the point where I could blurt it out anywhere and my parents were sick of hearing it because it was the same thing over and over again. So there's all those behind the scenes moments that happen too. And, sometimes I would take on opportunities in meetings and I'm like, why did I just waste all this time? Or how did I spend all this money? And then my parents are questioning, hey, is this really a good idea? You could get a great job somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's always in the back of your mind this is crazy.
What's an early failure or mistake that you made in your first business that you feel led you down a better path?
Ooh, tricky question. I've never been asked that question. I'm going to give you a different maybe answer to this. It's maybe not as direct and I can go back to it, but it's an interesting, maybe like towards the end kind of concept is, so I developed this one neck gaiter product and I spent so much money on the initial, when, COVID had hit, I was like, oh, I'm going to patent this face mask. And I made the filter so big. And I didn't test it as long because I thought, everyone's making masks. I wanted to get there out so quickly, and it was never going to be perfect. But I purchased a batch of like 3,000 that I realized was wrong and bad. And I thought, oh my God, how I spent all this money doing this. And then I got picked up by Good Morning America for a 4th time. And that led me to, all right, I got to redevelop this and just suck it up and then forward the costs onto this. So I had to learn to like adapt quickly with that, engage with the manufacturers, which then led me to the next part. And I'll just stay with me on this long thing. And
what did you, just to like break it down for the audience listening, so what did you get picked up by Good America for? Was it for the 3,000 masks that you ordered that was a failure?
No, they just wanted the brand as a whole.
Oh, okay.
And I wanted to clear all this product. And so I worked with the manufacturer. I redid the batch and everything and coming to get it in time. And I ended up getting, the end of the show, it was a success. It was so stressful. The batch came in the day before. They require that you ship out within 24 to 48 hours. And you're getting more orders, that day than you do I did the whole year. It's just madness. It's volume that you can't pay for. And so I was operating at that level. And this is the inflection point that I was trying to get at, is that I was doing all this. I figured that out. It's exciting. I'm adapting. I'm flexible. I'm making good money. But I hated doing that. Like, I was so behind the scenes, and I felt like I wasn't growing as an entrepreneur and a founder. And I'm on national television with my brand and just in front of all the cool things. I was listed at Tory Johnson's top products for the year. And I still just felt like what I was doing it was not impactful, and it wasn't for me long term. And it was so hard to come to that realization. And if I didn't have that instance of, hey, I know I'm operating here, but still not fulfilled, then I wouldn't have pursued the coaching side, which where I am now.
It's the irony of conversation. Every time I walk in here, I literally just had this conversation with my mentor not even 2 hours ago. And how did you know that it wasn't fulfilling for you anymore? What were the signs of just like, hey, this is not where I want to be? Because I think we all think being on Good Morning America and getting this praise and getting this is like, oh, this is where I want to be. And my mentor literally said, maybe what you think you want is not really what you want. And I was like, you hit the nail on the head.
Oh, yeah. That's why I was like, maybe this isn't the exact answer she's looking for, but I'm just going to try and put it out there, because that was, I was so upset. I was almost nauseous thinking that, oh my gosh, I worked this hard and I'm operating and I don't want to do it anymore. Am I being a quitter? And because I was a high level athlete my whole life. And it was, if you fail, if you do something, that's not an option. You train harder, you push harder, you
speaking my language.
Grit, yeah. And so I thought, oh my gosh, I'm being a quitter. I'm a failure. That's all I kept telling myself. And it was, I opened up little bits of coaching on the side, but I had founders begging me. And I just thought, okay, well, it's easy for me, so maybe I'll try it out.
Yeah.
And then when I allowed myself to just do that on the side, as in, because one meeting made me feel good, and another one, it was people were taking this advice that I had just from my experiences. I didn't feel like it was anything special.
Yeah.
But the impact of that was this kind of grain that just grew, and I just had so much more, I guess, excitement around it. And my husband, it was so funny. I'll never forget this. He looked at me one day when I finally admitted I wasn't happy, and he saw the money that I was making from coaching while still providing an impact. And he goes, you take that inventory and you burn it out back and you just coach. Like, screw the company as a whole. And I was like, oh, I can't do that. I worked on this company for over 5 years, 6 years. I'm not just going to throw it away. I'm doing really well with the company. So why would I just do that? And he's like, you have no idea the impact that you're having on these founders. And it took someone else to have me realize that that's really where the impact was. But it took failed inventory, operating at the highest level that I thought, to then go back down to, hey, I could start something new, which was also scary.
How did you know that your skill set was in what's now Power to Pitch and in the coaching to founders?
Yeah, so it started small. It's a course in community now, but where it started was just one-offs. And I realized that founders kept asking for more time. And I was getting paid by, had hourly rates, and they were asking for more and more. And then they were winning money, not only in grants, but they were raising a lot of money. And I thought, okay, if they're taking this advice and they're converting it like that, maybe this could be something.
Yeah.
So they essentially told me that. It didn't come from me thinking, oh, they went off, they paid, and then they're happy. It led to another level of impact for them. And they would then refer founders and people to me to help their friends.
So you're like, okay, I'm onto something. And this is what do you think you do differently or what skill sets do you think you have that make it so translatable to them in something that lands and they can turn around and execute at that level?
I would say it's, and I'm not perfect by any means, but I knew that when I was concise and I led with my story and I was clear and I put together an action plan, that it immediately converted. And so when I gave founders this plan and shared experience of, hey, I failed in this way, because, there's so many accelerators and programs out there, and they all have all these different mentors and advisors that give you conflicting advice because they're not all on the same page or they're volunteering their time. I see hundreds of founders now that come to me saying this, and they don't know who to trust because, they never personally went through that experience, or they have never even helped someone do X, Y, and Z thing that they're going after. So yeah, you're grateful that someone's willing to spend time with you, but it's actually not worthwhile doing it. So it was, okay, I know I could do these things in a concise, clear way. I have the experience. I've already helped founders raise money. So if I can build this out and then have, in a more scalable way where it's not just one-offs for me, then that's where I think I can deliver on impact.
We're speaking the same language because my day job is now kind of combining with this. So it's always funny how this stuff works. And when you're new into the startup world, there's just a lot that you don't know. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges as an entrepreneur is entrepreneurs, I think, kind of flock together. Like I've felt very supported by most of them. And I felt like their opinions and the advice that they give is very honest because it's coming from a place of like, I've been there, I've messed up. I know how it feels to be crying because you wasted this much money. You wasted 10 hours. Like we all kind of can resonate with that. But there's also a lot of coaching platforms or a lot of courses, and you take them and then you get out of it and you're like, well, there was nothing of value here. And I just felt like I spent all this money and now I'm here with no skills, no advice, and I'm really back at square one. So I think it's interesting that you're doing this in a very executable way. Do you work mostly with people who are trying to raise funding, or are you still in that like idea stage founder?
No, so we're very specific and niche on the criteria now.
Okay.
And we work with pre-seed to seed stage.
Okay.
We're industry agnostic. They must have some sort of a validated MVP. So they can be pre-revenue, but if they have a certain number of emails, any pre-sales, have they talked to a certain amount of strategic partners? Do they have any LOIs in place? Have they built out somewhat of the platform or tested it to then now, hey, we validated we need funds to actually build, the beta or whatever it is. When they're in, that's our sweet spot because we know how to execute on the communication for someone who wants to overshare and they're super excited, but they want to throw all the things at the investor and they don't understand how to get them what they want, or they treat the investor as a customer when that's one of the worst things that you can do because you could still get investment even if they're not a direct, daily type of customer.
Yeah.
So we go through investor psychology, relationship management, pitch formats, deck, potential Q&A. We give them due diligence checklist, and we run through. Once we approve all their documents, we actually make direct introductions to investors in their industry. So we've created a vetted and curated founder. And then, we've helped them raise over $6 million in grants and venture capital within, my business hasn't been, technically the coursing community is less than a year old. And so we've worked with founders once we get them focused instead of all this noise or, they want to send a 55-page deck. It's like, no, that is so unnecessary. You just check these boxes. And this is where it's going to get you to that next level because we want to give them that foundation and that communication to be able to get to Series A and beyond. And, we work with a lot of underrepresented founders as well because, less than 2% or around 2% ever get venture capital. And then only 2% of women ever reach $1 million. And that is just so backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's not just women that we work with, but we see, and I have so many war stories of the crazy stuff that investors tell women in these underrepresented founders. It's, hey, you shouldn't have another baby. You want to raise another round. You don't get pregnant again. Oh, like the lines that I have, or they'll only comment on their outfits. In all of those things. So we work with a lot of women-specific funds that are awesome. And, we really try and help that underrepresented founder group, or those who came in and are immigrants and they don't have maybe the natural network, or they don't even have maybe some of the social cues that we do.
Yeah.
Or are lucky enough to have. So we also work on the psyche of a lot of those things.
What's the single, I know this is a tough question, but what's the single greatest factor that makes someone get professional funding?
That's an easy answer.
Okay.
They're coachable.
Oh.
So I interviewed over 100 VCs on the top 4 traits that they screen for. It's coachability, grit, passion, and integrity. So gritty is, hey, if you have to pivot, like, is my money still going to be safe? You're going to get me a return. Passion, if you're not excited, how do you expect me to be excited?
True.
The coachability, hey, if I'm going to give you advice and I know something's not working because I have experience or a network around this and you don't adapt, game over. And then integrity, if you're lying during the process, or you're trying to fudge answers or spin it, or you're not sending me the right documents, you're trying to hide things, or you saying you have a potential lead but you don't, game over. So I know that's 4, but number one is coachability, because, that's something that's hard to teach of someone being open to change, or telling them that their baby, aka their business, is ugly, and hey, here's how to fix it. Not everyone has the right answers for you, but there's good and bad investors, and there's good and bad founders.
The biggest challenge is how to know who to take advice from. What would you tell someone that's struggling with a lot of different opinions, and how to know what to take action on, and then what to stay true to your gut and to your core on?
That's an awesome question. And we have so many founders come to us struggling with this, and we tell them that it's your intuition. As simple as that seems, is deep down what that is. You want to take certain things, but you have to learn to hone in on your gut more than anything. And then the second piece of that is, I would say that you have to narrow your network. Yeah. When I was starting, I was like, I'm going to get a mentor for manufacturing. I have a mentor for financials. I had so many mentors that I was just taking these meetings just to take them. And I was draining myself and not actually working on the business.
Yes.
So narrow the amount of mentors you have, and you'll figure out, and you get to kind of pick who's really on your side, who cares, who's stronger. And another piece is, you can outgrow mentors. People don't realize that.
Just like you outgrow any other relationship, I think you hit the nail on the head.
And friends too. Like, I've transitioned out of certain friends. We don't have the same goals, and that's fine. That's just part of life. Yeah. And it's hard to come to that realization, but if you actively work on those few things, you'll realize, which people are close and good, and that you want to keep up with on a, biweekly, monthly, quarterly basis. And I was assigned a mentor in this one fellowship that I had, who told me that I should go get a corporate job, that I had such great speaking skills, and I had all this knowledge, and that just what I was working on, you could do better. And
wow,
it was,
see you never.
Yeah. No, literally. I was like, thank you so much for your time, but I hope we never talk again. And I have so many stories of people saying that kind of stuff, and you want to think, they have my best interest at heart, and I know he meant well, but no, thank you.
No, thank you, but no, thank you. It's hard to filter through. And I think with age comes wisdom. And like, my mentor just has taught me a lot. And everything he says, he like speaks into my forefront, because he'll tell me these things. And then however long, 6 months later, it happens. And I'm like, oh shit. And then I know to catch myself, but I'm like, without him, I definitely would have made a lot more mistakes. And I think that's the value in mentors, is they save you so much time, and it's just knowing who to listen to. And I think who to listen to is exactly what you said. You're like a gut feeling. Like, do they feel like they have my best intention, or are they trying to sell me something? And I think a lot of that kind of comes down to ego. And I think men naturally have ego, and I have a lot of male mentors, but you can just tell if they're like, oh, you can't do it, and it's just because they want to be better than you, or if they're like, hey, this is coming from a genuine place, like this is not going to work because of X, Y, and Z, but you should do this instead. And I think that's how I know for myself I've kind of weeded out some of those naysayers, if you will.
And the other side of the coin of in terms of figuring, kind of trusting your gut is we vet every single founder who comes into our program. It doesn't matter how much you pay us. If we don't think that you're coachable and you're those 4 things and you're willing to learn and accept change and be collaborative, then you're not a fit for us. And we will gladly give you some resources. We're gonna hate each other and the outcome isn't gonna be there. Like, you're a reflection of us, essentially, when you're putting all these things together, when we make introductions, right? We want you to work hard, and we know our investors look for those things as well. And we're giving you the inside scoop and all the secrets of what they're exactly looking for. Hey, what's their average check size? What do they want to see in a founder? How big of a team should you have? Do they like solo founders? Do they like multiple co-founders? Like, we are that granular in terms of detail. And we'll have people just tell us, oh, no, I my pitch is great. I just am looking for your introductions. And we just tell them, we said, that's not a part of our process. We haven't met a pitch that we couldn't fix.
Exactly.
Never in my life have I, and it's because it's an evolution as well. Always improvements that could be made. And if you're not willing to go through that, it doesn't matter how much you pay us. Like, that's not our process.
What's the biggest mistake that a founder makes that leads to the downfall of their company?
So many. It's funny. I just recorded a YouTube video on this today at Power to Pitch, but one of the top mistakes is oversharing.
Ooh, got to work on that one. I'm just kidding.
I mean, hey, we're all guilty of it, right?
Yeah.
But when you get into an investor meeting, you'd be surprised how many investors say, "Oh, founder never asked me a question." They just talk about themselves. They overshare. They want more time than they should, and they don't know how to concisely answer things, whether it's in Q&A or even with their pitch. They want to share, oh, just these couple more slides. I swear it's going to do this, this, and this. And you're like, whoa, slow down. Let's build a relationship. I've never met you before. Like, oversharing is the most common thing that we see. So that's what, in terms of pitch preparation and Q&A and all that, it is rehearsed. It is practiced. It is so methodical, because that's a big make or break.
Did you build your first company on your own, correct? Or did you have
I built the first company on my own. I made all the mistakes in the book.
Yeah.
And I, then started Power to Pitch, kind of, again, second time accidental. It was just a need. Founders wanted help. So I did that on my own as well. But I'm very proud to say that, in Power to Pitch, I wasn't looking for a partner.
Yeah.
But it was funny. I was helping this founder with a pitch, and she said, you know what? You need to just meet my lead investor. I think you guys will hit it off. And I said, okay. She said, I don't know what's going to happen. Just chat with her. I said, okay. So we chatted. She's had an active job, really well-paying job. She's in banking for 25 years, managed $10 billion of commercial real estate, has her own patent on the process, smart woman, and is an active angel in 16 plus companies. And we could just talk about the same things and pitching and the mistakes we see with founders, because she's getting deal flow all the time. And she started to send me founders. And then all of a sudden was like, Kat, I'm not happy in my job. And I have the same mission as you. I want to figure out how to work together. And I said, all right. And we just share the same brain and mission to help founders get funded faster. And so she gets to bring the investor perspective to the program, and I have the founder storytelling perspective.
What's the hardest part about going from a founder yourself to a co-founder?
I don't have to do everything.
Yeah.
And that was in my first company. I took forever to hire people because I thought, if it's just going to take me, writing up my email newsletters or, updating my back end and all my different marketplaces and stuff, if I could do it instead of paying someone $25 or $40 an hour, I'll just do it. I'll suck it up. When at the end of the day, I actually should have been doing the way more impactful tasks that were actually bringing more money. And I read this. I didn't read it. From a mentor of mine said, if you can pay someone $40 an hour to do your basic tasks, do it. You're worth more in the end and doing the bigger impactful things. So, being able to pass off tasks or admit to, hey, I'm actually not as good as it. Let's hire someone for this was something that took me too long to realize.
What advice would you give someone that maybe feels they're in that spot on, I think it's a mindset switch of like letting go of control? What would you tell someone?
So what I did was I had a spreadsheet, and every day I wrote down, and it was a little bit tedious, but it was so worth it in the end. You can use a free time tracker online, and I would, every task and whatever I did throughout the entire day, I logged from whether it took me 2 minutes or an hour and 7 minutes. I logged the exact time frame in the task, and then I would label it if I really liked it, if I hated it, and if I should be doing this or if I should hire someone for it. And I saw the accumulation. I was like, oh my God, I'm spending 10 hours a week just doing basic email stuff, and I hate doing it. And there's some really great designers I could find on Upwork. Wow, I didn't realize that was such a time suck. If I spend 10 hours going after new customers and suppliers, oh my gosh, I would have, I would 10x that time.
Yeah.
And so it's literally writing down the little granular tasks and the time sucks and time blocking and prioritizing changed my life.
I love that response. Although I'm not as detail oriented as you, so maybe this is something that I can learn. I'm bringing it back to the co-founder. What's the biggest challenge of having a co-founder?
Biggest challenge of co-founder is just letting go of certain things.
Yeah.
And it's, I'm so used to doing this and having my hand in everything that I know I can trust her for certain things, but also I'd never met her before. So I'm like, oh my gosh, what can I trust? What should she have access to? And starting slow. And she hasn't given me a second of doubt or regret in any sense. So it was mutual. She was admitted, hey, I've only helped support companies. I haven't actually, run much, and so it was difficult trying to figure out, hey, what's that balance going to be like? But I allowed it to be a slow process, and we trusted each other in that sense and worked on getting trust in each other. So difficult. It was just, wait, what's our roles? Like, how much communicate? Like, what's that balance and that line look like?
How did you know that it was right to be or to have a co-founder? I mean, obviously you just explained when you all met and what you felt was right in that moment, but you see a lot of, and I mean, even for me with this podcast, like I started with someone disaster. And so I kind of have like this fear of like, even if I wanted to partner with someone, like it's still, you just don't know, especially when you don't know them personally. So how did you know that it was right? And what would you guide someone on maybe looking out for if they do want a co-founder or want to pursue that route?
That's a really great question. And there's no single answer. We see founders struggle with this at, whether they're making $1,000 or $10 million, there's still a lot of different issues that go on. But you have to have clear goals and expectations and metrics that each of you are responsible for and that you share. And when, we set up a weekly team meeting. We didn't used to do that at first, but it's like, all right, we're going to come to the table. We're going to talk about, hey, how we're growing, what's working, what's not working, and making sure that you're collaborative and not letting anything that's aggravating you go under the rug. It was like, hey, this didn't work, or you should follow up like this, or hey, if it makes it easier for me if you do this, can we do that and operate in that way? And having because if someone's going to fight that or think they can just handle it and do it without you, no way.
Yeah.
Like I like to tell founders too, and this also happens with the co-founders, you're giving up equity in any instance. It's a marriage.
Yeah.
It is an absolute marriage to give up equity.
Yeah.
And it's funny that more equity, founder relationships last longer than most marriages, which is really funny statistic. I'm one of those, I'm single, but I'm one of those people that I'm like, I've always said I would want to start a business. And there was like some sort of guidance it's maybe on TikTok, but it was basically saying that people who start a business together are like 30% more likely to stay married or like something along those lines because there's a shared passion. And I'm like, see, I'm not crazy. My mentor's like, don't do it. It's going to be terrible. I was going to say, I think my husband and I would kill each other. And so
Is he entrepreneurial or no?
So what I was about to say is that I thought I idol Sarah Blakely. Started the product thing, going door to door. I was like, oh my God, I'm so gritty like her. I just total fangirl. Some girls, fangirl about like music and certain artists.
Yeah.
I am Sarah Blakely's biggest fan. And I thought, hey, she got married at 40, got to focus on the business, had none of these different distractions and all these things. So I'm going to be like Sarah Blakely, and I wouldn't go on dates.
Oh, wow. Wow. This is literally me. You are me.
This is so awesome. So I was like, I'm not going to party. I'm not going to go on dates. I'm going to be super focused on my business, and there are going to be no other excuses. I would skip out on family things. I made a lot of sacrifices, which my parents started to complain about and things. And and all of a sudden I get invited to this ugly Christmas sweater party and I didn't want to work. I was like, it's a Friday night. My girlfriend said, you need to socialize. And I said, okay. And I had actually had 2 girlfriends who finally convinced me. I really didn't want to go because I didn't know anyone there. And he was wearing a damn elf sweater, and we met, went on a date the next day, and we've been together ever since. And we talked about business that night. He started a company in college. His mom had a store and I thought, I'm like, oh my God, his mom's got a store, so I'm going to only talk to him to get my products in her store. This is business.
Is too much.
No, honest to God, this is me. I'm like,
no, this is literally
him.
me. Spiders like this sounds like Erin. I am not kidding. Verbatim. Like, not allowed dating until I'm 25 and making 6 figures. Yep, keep going.
Yeah, no, so all I had to say was, I'm just here, and I'm going to get my products in their store, and I'm giving him the pitch, and my girlfriend walks by, she's rolling her eyes, she goes, of course you would be in a business meeting now that we're at a freaking house party. What is wrong with you? And we're laughing and laughing, but we just talked about the different trials and tribulations and all these things, and his mom's got the store, she would love my product, and I'm, my eyes are just like, dollar sign, she's going to carry my product. Yeah, no, I was like, screw the marriage. Like, I'm going to be in his mom's store. And it was so funny. And he loved the way that I talked about business and just had my own company and still dealt with the struggles and the naysayers. And I think, that was it. And he was just very, he respected so much of the business. So I actually, before I even met him, I dated this guy who used to roll his eyes when we'd go out to hang out with friends because they'd ask what I did. And I'm an entrepreneur. I pitch. So I'm excited to tell people what I do. Yeah. He would roll his eyes. He'd be like, oh, she's going to do this thing again. And one of his guy friends was like, man, no, this is so cool. I want to learn about it. And I remember that moment so vividly. And it didn't register that he was totally not right for me until I went to a pitch competition and I won. And I was the only woman pitching, and he goes, you only won because you were a girl.
Oh, toodles.
And it was like, why is that? This does not make any sense. And it's the total opposite with him. We went to an expo. He said he helped set up. He all of a sudden, people were walking by. He started pitching them my pitch because he'd heard it so many times. And he's literally selling for me and bringing people into the booth. And he was so excited and thought it was the coolest thing. And I just thought, yep, this is it. And I didn't want it, but it was it.
See, I wonder if he has any friends. And no, I told myself this year because I am very similar to you. But what I realized was that you can do all of this stuff. And this kind of ties back to the beginning of your episode, but you can still feel empty. And my mentor basically was like, you're going to be 40 years old. You're going to have a multi-million-dollar business. You're going to be sitting on a big house and you're going to be lonely. And I always knew that I wanted to get married and I always knew I wanted to have kids. But my parents didn't get married till they were older. And so I always kind of knew like I had time. And it wasn't until this past year that I was like, I lost my job. And I was like, this is my final fucking straw with the corporate world. Like, I want to do my own business. I want to be in control of my destiny. Like, I am full diving heads into entrepreneurship. Like, I felt like this was the calling. The podcast was kind of a step. Like, things were just rolling. And I was like, I need to be more open-minded because I was to the point where I wouldn't even go on a date. I mean, obviously, like, you met him and I've never met someone and like
I was forced to meet him.
Exactly. Like that. I'm trying. I'm like opening myself up. I'm like very spiritual, but I'm like, I needed to just open myself up to the idea because it was not happening. Like I've never dated someone seriously before. Commitment, we're working on it, but I was just like, there's no way. And to your point, like, entrepreneurship, it's just a mindset. And I think I knew I needed to be with someone that thought like that because it can be annoying. And like, I have had friends that are like, you don't shut up about the podcast or like, you don't stop about this. And I'm like, because I get so obsessed with it because I'm a very
my life.
Exactly. It is your life and it's something that you love and it's hard not to share about it. Like when I get ideas, I'm like, oh my gosh. And I call my mentor. He's like, oh God, here goes 2 hours of my time. But he gets it because he's been there. And so it's like, once you find those people, we just flock together because it's hard.
Well, and if I could add to that too, where I was back to back, and I felt guilty doing fun things.
Yeah.
Because all I could think about was, I could have been using this time to do this for my business and this.
I literally just said that
Yeah.
the other day. The opportunity cost of going on a date.
Literally exactly me. I'm like, I would rather, eat this while I'm on the computer with these ideas. But to that point, until I was just so in love with this boy who I was like regretting because I'm like, it's distracting me, blah, blah, blah. But my mental health was so different. And I thought, sacrificing all these things was going to be good. But when I took those forced breaks to hang out with him and do little things, I was so much more motivated and refreshed to run the business. So it helped me in that sense that I wasn't taking my own breaks. Lunch break? What? Like what? At night, I'm not tired, so I'm just going to suck it up and I'm going to finish this thing so I don't have to do it tomorrow so I can do something else. And it was always, I always put something on my plate. And I still do, and it's still, hard to turn off as an entrepreneur sometimes, but he mentally was there for me in that, or if I was struggling with something, I need to talk out loud, or, I had this idea where I was a solo founder for the first company. It was me, myself, and I in my brain just fighting each other, on what the heck to do.
It's constant. It's
yeah.
just like a circle.
Nonstop.
Yeah.
I can't physically turn my craziness of ideas off to the point where I sleep with Post-it notes and a pen next to my bed. So that's also another story. But,
you might be a one level above me of crazy. Just kidding.
Or two or three. I admit it. But, I always I'm like, you have to be crazy to be an entrepreneur. And the fact that he understood that and could help me, break down these certain things and supported me, it was super powerful. And after I sold the company, even though I wanted to do the coaching on the side, I still was like, hey, I never had someone telling me what to do. I never had a corporate job.
Yeah.
I don't know, how to structure this. I'm still, want to get beyond just the me and the one-offs. And I was offered a job to run a pitch program. And when I countered their job offer, because I knew what I was bringing to the table, they said, oh, you can maybe make that in a few years. And to me, I was like, that doesn't sit right. A few years? That's what I'm going to do in a few years? That's a long time.
Yeah. And
I looked at him and I said, what if just for a month or 3 months, let me figure this out. And if I don't like it and I don't know what I'm doing, I will happily go get another job. But I really think I have something here and I love the coaching and I have a little bit of traction. I don't know what I'm doing, but I have a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? And it was great insurance benefits. And he kind of looked at me like, oh my God, not again. And he was like, you're crazy, but do it. Like, absolutely do it. Hey, let's structure this. You should get testimonies from those people that did this and this. And he was so gung-ho about it that it made me excited and feel this level of, it brought back confidence in myself that I didn't even have at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, don't get a boyfriend just do those things. But I allowed myself to have fun and do that because it made me better. So if if a guy's not going to make you better, then keep solo. Go solo for sure.
There's two parts I want to go, but the first one I kind of want to touch on is how have you found balance as an entrepreneur? I think there's no such thing as balance. I'm going to agree with Gary Vee there, but how do you kind of go through the ebb and flows of, and this kind of ties into patience, when to hit the gas pedal and when to maybe take off a little bit because now you're not being productive because you've overworked yourself?
I'm really bad at this. I'm not even going to lie.
Okay.
I personally am so horrible at this. I think just because I can't turn it off, I feel guilty for turning it off sometimes. But what I've realized is that, I'm so lucky that I get to be self-employed. So I can technically work whenever I want.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that's, hey, I get to wake up, I want to do a workout at 10 a.m. and actually only start working at 1, I can technically do that whenever. Because my calendar is set to the hours that I want to work. And when I send my link out and stuff. But I realize that if I'm on a total work mode and I'm just having levels of genius and I'm sitting at my computer and I don't need to be distracted. I don't need another cup of coffee. I'm just sitting there grinding out these ideas or work or whatever it might be, or working on a pitch with a founder. I got to ride that wave. And then if I, come back the next day and I'm so mentally drained and I'm making errors or I'm not excited or energized, I have to force myself to break.
Yeah.
I don't give myself technically set hours. I do have kind of set hours, but I'm not so strict on them because I know if I give myself a break in a few hours or even tomorrow, the quality of work is going to 100x what my current situation and feeling is.
Mm-hmm.
So to honor that. And then Trello is my best friend and lifesaver. So it's kind of like a Notion, if you ever heard of it. So
we use Notion. Yeah.
I struggled to organize Notion the way that I liked it. So I found that in Trello, I have my days of the week, Monday through Friday, and then a tab labeled weekend, because sometimes I do stuff on the weekends.
That's
But I order what I need to do I list things in order of priority. So I'm not going to go to number 2 or 3 unless I've done one. And it's maybe the most annoying thing or whatever it is, but that is the absolute first thing I'm doing before I move on with my day. And that helps me realize, hey, these are actually like, if you think about that analogy, I don't know if you ever heard, where you have that jar and you have the rocks and you have the pebbles in the sand. And the rocks are the big things. The pebbles maybe fall through and the sand is at the bottom. It's the little stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's maybe not a right now in this moment. Your life's not going to be over if you don't do it. And I had to get better with, hey, if it's 6 p.m. and we want to just have a nice dinner together, instead of me trying to truck through these little things, can I move them over tomorrow because I did the most important things today?
Exactly, yeah.
Yes. So am I technically turned off? No. But recognizing my levels of exhaust and doing that kind of ebb and flow, I'm a way better founder.
I forget who told me this, but it was like, write down all the things that you have to do of like levels of importance. And my job's revenue generating. So like anytime I come to my boss and like I haven't done a bunch of little things, I'm like, I did revenue generating stuff. So like I emailed clients, I responded to that. Like if it's client facing, it's done for like the podcast. Like if it's booking interviews, it's communication, like that's done. The prep for the podcast, everything else comes secondary. And I think that was huge for me on priority, because you have this list and you think you need to do everything. And it's like, a lot of things don't need done right now. You just need to do the things that are most important. And my mentor always told me, do one thing every day to get you closer to your goal. And it's like the biggest action item, whether that's revenue, whether that's pitching something, like whatever that is. And that was huge switch for me, because I'm like, thank you. And the corporate world teaches you that there's a lot, you're doing so much, but what are you actually doing? Like, are you actually moving the needle, or are you sending emails and you're just fiddle farting around and now you're on 17 meetings and you really needed 0 meetings? And so I think that was huge for me, because I was kind of trained that way, and I'm very direct. So I never understood like, why am I on this hour meeting? I just waste an hour of my life. So I think it's good for people to recognize like, hey, these are the things that I need to do now to get me where I want to go. And then you're not burning yourself out. Because that's also something that I'm working on. I think every entrepreneur.
Literally, still me. I'm a exited and second time founder, like still working on it,
Yeah.
And if one thing that I would add to that too is, in terms of figuring out the balance is, okay, so for example, like revenue and some of the basics, I plan the year out. Hey, what do I want to do within this year? What are my current, obviously these things can change and they're projections, but what do I really want to do? And then I work backwards.
Mm-hmm.
So
Huge.
by month, if I actually want to talk to X amount of founders, or I want to help founders raise X amount, and I want to make X amount, and I want to update our courses, if I have to do this and this is my close percent, I'm going to talk to X amount of people per month, per week, per day, and get granular. Working backwards was so huge, because I have it on a board in front of me. These are my year goals. So I see it every morning, and it's like, did I do things today to make sure I matched up with that? Are we still messing around, or are we focused? And I stare at it every day.
I love this.
It's part of the crazy.
Yeah. Well, I also think it's just like reverse engineering it. I do this with the podcast when people ask for advice, like, how do you conduct such a good interview? I'm like, what's your outcome? And then just reverse engineer it from there. So like, what are questions that you can give? How can you leave a little bit of room for how can you leave room in there for movement? Like, how can you let the person kind of give more in certain situations and not be so stuck in a plan? I think it's kind of the same thing in business. We can be very rigid, like we have this goal and things are going to move and shift. And it's like, okay, can you kind of go with the waves here and ride the high ones and then ride the low ones, and then know where to kind of draw that middle line of like, okay, this is where I need to be. And that's how advice that I've gotten that has really landed, because it's easy to ride the highs and then it's really easy to get caught in the lows. So it's like, okay, we got to be even.
Oh, talking about lows. So I posted, LinkedIn has been my top platform accidentally. And I posted this and I didn't realize it would go viral. That, you know, I started doing this in my first company and still carried over my second company because the highs are high and the lows are low.
Yeah.
And if I would get a nice message from a customer, or I reached a certain milestone, or I did something, I had a little win or a big win, I would screenshot it and I would put it and just move it to an album in my phone that was labeled work motivation.
Aw, that's so cute.
When I was having a horrible day or thinking that I'm a piece of crap and I was worthless, and it was horrible self-talk in the first company because I'm like, I'm not enough, you know?
Yeah.
I would go and I would read it. I would sit down and I would go through all of those until I felt, and it reminded me until I felt good, because it reminded me that, hey, look at you're forgetting all the amazing things that you've done and you worked so hard for. So don't forget that. And I still do it with this company. Random messages from people, a founder saying they raised, like one founder, they never pitched in their entire life, and we helped them win an $85,000 grant so they can push back their actual fundraising to order a batch of inventory so they have better terms for their later round. And their message to us was so simple, but so impactful. And I said, I never want to forget that.
Yeah.
So I screenshot it and I put it in my work motivation album. And when I totally feel like shit, I go back to it and I just read it. And then it totally helps. It's amazing the psychological things that it does, you know, because I think most founders are really hard on themselves too. They want expectations to the moon and unicorn status and all those things, but you know, just because you don't have those, you didn't make Forbes 30 under 30 doesn't make you a bad founder.
Yeah. I just added that to my vision board yesterday. So it's funny that you said that. All the ironies. I'm going to touch on your exit a little bit. I know we touched on like how you knew and when you knew to sell it. What's one thing about the exit process that a lot of people don't know?
It is a total roller coaster. And the broker did try to tell me this, but I was like, this is fine. I can pitch my own company. I got all the docs. I did all the things. And I was under contract 4 times. Like, I had cash buyers and then crazy things. It wasn't due to the business. It was a buyer had something go wrong. A buyer just ghosted us for no reason. One had another business that just went under and they needed the cash. And I was so mentally drained from that process, having to pitch the same things and act excited to these random people over and over and over again. That was so draining. I was so close to being like, F this. I'm going to start the second company and figure it out from there, because one mentor, actually, I'll never forget this. He told me, sell your company for $1 so you could still say that you sold it. And I thought that was so offensive. And that's when I was like, I'm still not giving up. It took quite some time. So that process was 1. And 2 is you think you know your books, but you really don't. And you should really know your books. Like I brought on the wrong accountant for the company. I brought in an accountant who wasn't a startup specific wasn't a startup specific accountant. They didn't understand e-commerce. They just worked for my mom's bridal store. And I thought, hey, this is great. I know this person. They're going to help. They said they can help. I was supposed to be, I can't remember now. See, this tells you how much I learned. This is why I pay people to help me with this. Is I was supposed to be on a cash basis or accrual basis, one or the other, and I was on the wrong one. So for 5 years of my books, I had to go back. I think it was just 3 years that they needed, really, was I had to go back and update the matching with the inventory and the revenue per month, because she did it as a whole at the end of the year instead of each month. And the buyers were like, well, what the hell? What's each month? And I just wanted to pass them a spreadsheet, and then I wanted to die inside. It was, So a startup specific accountant is crucial.
How did you know that who was buying it was the right person in the right time to really let go?
Yeah, that was, for me, honestly, I was so excited about the other company that I knew I was ready, and this was my baby. And I was okay with, I'm not good at everything. This isn't my superpower. So I just wanted to bring on someone who knew, hey, if we're going to grow e-commerce and we're going to do this retail trade, what skills do you have to fill those? Because I got us to this point and I did a pretty damn good job of it. I have this foundation, and here are my ideas moving forward. And here's some other designs that I was actually working on. You know, what are your thoughts on those? And if they can give some education around that, and they had a knowledge and knew where they wanted to scale and direct the company, I thought, okay, great.
The exit process is so interesting to me because I feel like I literally said this to you before we got on. I'm like, I just want to sell something and kind of get it over with. But there's so much that goes into it. And I'm learning a lot just like of staying on board. So are you still on the team, or when you sold it, you were like, this is cut and dry, I'm done and I'm moving on? Because a lot of people have to stay on board. I had one guy that sold a podcast company for a few million and he still has to work for them. And I'm like, what in the world?
Yeah. So my deal was, I knew I wanted to run this company. I knew I didn't enjoy doing those things.
Yeah.
So I stayed on for, I think in the contract was 3 months.
Okay, that's not bad.
I had to give a certain amount of hours and offload whatever tasks. I also, what saved me a lot of time was I recorded how I did certain things or how much time things spent and logging into things. I was super detailed on, the daily and what I spreadsheets. I'm super OCD. So my Google Drive was, the prettiest thing you'd ever see, and how organized it was by folder and type and documents and whatever. So that made it easy and faster in terms of the process. But, if the buyers text me or email me and need assistance and stuff, I want the brand to succeed. I'm not going to keep from doing that.
Yeah.
But am I going to spend 10 hours a week with you when I don't have equity anymore to do all this work? No. So could it be paid consulting for the future? Sure. But I completely offloaded the company, and that was by design because I didn't want to manage inventory and run e-commerce anymore. I learned a lot and I'm super grateful for it, but inventory is crazy. Before I got a warehouse, I was having tens of thousands of units shipped by semi-truck to my parents' house.
Oh, that's going to be
And
me.
I didn't have a lift gate. So they were like, where's your men to offload this? Where's the loading dock? And I was like, me? And I would physically, per box, I'd have to rip open the pallet and I physically took off each box of inventory in my parents' garage. It filled up one whole garage itself. And that's what I was, when I say I was nitty gritty, like I was in it till I got the warehouse, which was amazing. But yeah. And thanks to my in-laws as well, who helped me figure out my first warehouse.
That's the biggest. I can talk to you about this. I mean, not that a lot of people on the podcast are like, not that I'm not sharing, but I like came up with an idea of like a business to start. Like I got the website, got the name, whatever. And my mentor goes, you do realize you're going to hate boxes after this because it's like a health and wellness type subscription box. I knew I wanted to be recurring revenue. Like I knew a lot of things that I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be in health and wellness. I had an idea and I was like, I think this will stick if I execute this the right way. And I'm like, and then I was talking with a lawyer about trademarks, all the little things that you got to do for it. And he's like, where are you going to put these boxes? And I'm like, he's like, hundreds of boxes are going to be in your living room. Well, how are you going to get them to, like all these little things that you don't think about? And I'm over here like, oh, I can do anything. And now my mentor was, he's like, so how's it going? How's it going? I'm like, yeah, this is going to be me with just like all these boxes in a living room, trying to shuffle them out and putting them in my car because it's all the stuff people don't see. But I feel like it's just it makes it's so much better once you make it. Like I'm sure once you sold that company, you're just like, wow, you can look back on 5 years or however long it took you to get there and be like, wow, it all came to this moment.
No, it's so weird. And it didn't hit me the first week that I was and I had to do all the training and stuff, but bringing the inventory to the new warehouse for the buyer and literally having it dropped off to a truck to just the rest of it was so wild. It was so wild. And funny enough, my husband drove the truck with me, took off work to help bring the inventory, my last bit of inventory from our warehouse to the one that the new buyer had. And it was like, okay, well, now I got to go work on my second idea.
Yeah.
And I didn't take a week off and enjoy it, which I wish I did in, kind of thinking about it now, but I went right into another thing because I was so excited and energized and it didn't feel like work.
Yeah.
And it was so weird. It was super weird, honestly. And when I look at pictures, I'm like, wow, I'm so glad I already got through that because I wouldn't do it again.
Yeah. What's been the biggest shock to you about moving from inventory e-commerce to now doing coaching and working with founders?
So our course, it's done really, really well now. And if it's bad and no one liked it, or in the future there's issues or I got to make a change, I can press the delete button. Instead of if there's this, hey, trendy fabric that we wanted to try, I'm stuck with 10,000 pieces and I got to figure out how to offload that, Or I once had a batch of inventory, 3,000 pieces, 98% of the batch was done wrong. And they only gave me 50% of my money back.
Oh, hell no.
Oh, yeah. That's a whole nother story of, oh, no, we will fix it, but we want it, and you got to cover the shipping because that's not in our contract. And I went through the works with that one and just cut my losses there because, so transitioning, it's way, I can spend more time on myself and the branding versus the little details of all of this product and organizing it and the labor of it. And thankfully it wasn't something that could expire because Lord knows, I mean, the CPG founders that we work with who are in food and bev, man, I don't think I have the stomach for that.
Yeah.
But it was just it was so easy. To me, I'm like, this is so freeing. I don't have to deal with, take half a day off because I got to manage all the new product that's coming in.
Yeah.
And then forecasting, okay, this is going to last 3 months. So I'm at the 2-month mark. I'm ordering a new batch that's going to come in 60 days. And then the air freight is going to take 7 days. And then I'm talking with like customs for this before it comes in and blah, 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 like, so it was so much in between.
That you're just like, okay, I only have the courses and working with people. But I also think the flip side of that is like working with founders. There's always challenges in every business. I think that's just working with people is probably the hardest challenge.
Yeah. People are my inventory now.
Yeah.
In a way. But no, as we curate the founders, it's really, we love who we have. We haven't had a single bad egg yet, and I'm sure it'll come when the masses, but, because we work so hard to kind of curate them and figure out, are we the right person to help them? And if we're not, we say we aren't. Because then it's going to look bad on us and we're both going to fail.
Yeah.
So it's been a lot easier of a transition for sure.
What's one thing that you do differently that's made you so successful?
In terms of?
Whether it's a characteristic about yourself or one thing about your personality or the way you operate that you feel has made you stand out among a lot of other entrepreneurs who are trying to do what you're doing.
I like to think that being an athlete has made me a really good founder in terms of training, being okay to fail, practicing through tough times, going towards a coach who can help me and who has a better perspective on things, being gritty and getting sweaty and dirty at times to make things happen. So I would say that, maybe I'm not the smartest person in the room, but I will be the hardest I will be the hardest working person in that freaking room. I guarantee you. I will do whatever it takes. And I think it's just because I had that athlete mentality of, hey, if this course isn't launching or working, or hey, we made some phase updates to our course. It's not happening. So I spent this past weekend, I spent both days, Saturday and Sunday, working on the course updates. And I had all these friends going to brunch and doing fun things. But the sacrifice and I'm going to work so hard at this is something that, I know a lot of people don't have. And I'm proud that I do that in a way. So I guess, sacrifice is also paired with that. Are you willing to sacrifice certain things or certain lifestyle for a better outcome down the road?
I think the biggest thing was sacrifice. And this is what I've taught myself is knowing what to sacrifice and when. And I think there's just certain times where it's like, I can't go out because I have to do this, or I need to go home early because I have a lot to, and I've always kind of been that person too. And I think if you're listening to this and you resonate with that, then you know that you're willing to do the work. Did you play sports in college?
Yeah. So I played soccer when I was younger and tennis, and then ended up getting a scholarship for tennis in college.
Where'd you play?
Grand Valley in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Grand Valley State.
Okay. My sister was a tennis player. So was my mom. So I'm very familiar
awesome.
with tennis. So that's, I did that as well. All right. A few more questions and then I'll get you out of here because this convo, I could talk to you for literally 2 hours. I just had a question. Patience. This is one of my favorite questions to ask because I'm naturally not the most patient person, and nothing bothers me more than when someone says, please be patient. As someone that's been successful and exited a company, when should someone be patient? And when should someone leverage that impatience to their advantage and to keep moving the needle forward?
We see so many founders impatient about the pitch process. They want a quick fix. They just want to send their deck out to 100 people and see what happens. So we have to dial them back and be patient on the pitch and communication process. If you cannot get clear on what you want, your story, your problem, your solution, to the point where you're so concise that someone else can repeat it for you in an easy and ingestible way in that sense, then, you got to go back to the drawing board. We don't look at your deck. So the patience in terms of the pitch and the communication, if you can't dial that in, don't do any of those other things. You're going to end up wasting time. So patience in terms of communication and your fundraising strategy is something that all of our founders got to work on. Did you have a part 2 to that question?
Also, like, do a broadly speaking. So outside of just power to pitch, like, I think as an entrepreneur as a whole, I think if you're a good one, you're naturally impatient. You want to make quick decisions. Like, when in your life have you needed to be patient? And then when do you know, okay, it's time to be a little bit more impatient and like push things through?
I would say patience in general in terms of getting results. Because, you want the sales right away. You want to be revenue generate. You want all these things. But in terms of sales and conversions and your testimony and feedback and learning, that is a slow process. Like, that's something to be patient on, is the sales and the impact, I would say.
But that's the hardest thing to be. That's the hardest thing.
Yeah, I guess you have to be patient on setting up the foundation. So, what are these things that you're doing and building and learning and filling in the gaps to be able to get there? Like, that's the patience process, is, those boxes that you got to check beforehand.
And then what are mistakes that you see entrepreneurs make where they could be more impatient and drive more urgency?
In terms of a pitching process or in general?
General. You can do both if you want to, but I think more high level.
I think I see a lot of founders just in general too. They expect potential mentors or people to get back to them super quickly when they have these lives. And it's so crazy. The amount of people who message me and say, "Can I pick your brain?" That makes me want to poke my eyes out. No, I do not have...
My message after this, can I pick your brain?
Like, no, I do not have time for you to pick my brain. That sounds disgusting too. Like, no, that's
What's
not
your
gonna
question?
happen.
Let's be more direct.
Like, if you need my time, like, is it really, am I actually going to be able to help you in this instance? I think, founders go too quickly in terms of they want answers from someone and it's not always the right person to answer that question. So I wish founders would be more methodical and tactical in who they're getting answers from. Be patient in who you're going after, because maybe not always the right person and you're going to waste meetings and stuff. It's the messages that I get that people haven't researched me. I'm getting pitched the craziest things or being asked the craziest things, that claiming to know me or whatever on LinkedIn. And it's like, you did not look at what I actually do at all.
Looking back on your career, what's one thing that you would tell yourself before starting this journey, the entrepreneurship journey?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is I wish I was more kind to myself.
Oh, this is good.
I had so much negative self-talk and feelings of not being good enough because I didn't reach this metric or sale, or I wanted to look like this type of founder and have, this level of impact within the year, but I was still doing really amazing things. And I didn't even acknowledge that.
Yeah.
And I would say, and what I still try and work on actively in this new company too, is just, if things aren't perfect or moving at the rate and such, that, how would you talk to a friend? How would you talk to your younger self? Would it be kind? Would you be, mad or, even rude to yourself internally? No. It's just like, that internal communication is so, so important, because that psychologically changed my whole mood throughout the day, changed my conversations with people, my outlook when going after things. And I know you like to ask about gratitude, to have a really great answer already for that. is just, that the positive self-talk and that positive energy goes way further than anything else.
Big energy girl. Big energy girl. We could talk spirituality for 3 days and we'd still be here on Friday or on the weekend. I mean, I would, and I think it kind of goes back to worthiness. And like when it's hard. I think the hardest part about entrepreneurship is mentally. Like I had this conversation at Happy Hour. I'm like, you just keep doing things and you don't see results, but you just know and you trust. And like, there's just this true faith. Like I just know something's going to work out. And if it doesn't, it doesn't, but it's like this blind walking through the dark. And I think if you don't have that positive energy, or if you just are telling yourself you can't, you're not going to get there, because it's hard and it's lonely and there's not a lot of people around you that are doing it. And so it's really up to you to change that. And that's been one of the biggest things that I've had to work on. I've always kind of been like not overly confident, but I feel like I've always kind of had a confidence to me, but it's hard and like feeling worthy of what you're creating and what you're building. And that was a huge shift that I didn't even know in myself, that I had to pivot to be like, you're worthy of any praise or any feedback that you're getting or any of that type of stuff, which I think is huge. 2 more and then I'll get you out of here. Was there a point in your, I mean, you kind of touched on a few, but was there one point that you look back on and you're like, this was the tipping point for everything that I created after that?
I would say a really big inflection point for me was then I was literally minutes from not applying to the FedEx Small Business Grant. I was like, 10,000 people apply a year. This is ridiculous. I'm still in college. No one this young has ever won. You know, why am I going to do this? Mm-hmm. And then this other voice was like, you got this time left. Just do your best, fill out the basics and go from there. It was free to apply. What the hell? Why not?
Yeah.
And I got a call while I was driving back from tennis practice. We're so excited to inform you that you're one of the winners of the FedEx Small Business Grant Competition. And I damn near almost drove off the road.
You're like, Whew.
And it was in the top 100, so I had to work on a second round of applications. And I'm so glad that I put so much effort into that.
Yeah.
And I spent time doing it. And they asked me to join their entrepreneur advisory board. They flew me out to Memphis. I got to meet with their team. They said, your pitch video was one of the best we've ever seen. Can we film your top pitch tips on it? They flew a team from Boston to my house to film me talking about my top pitch tips in my childhood bedroom. And that video changed my life, because that's what went on. And I didn't think anything of it. Mm-hmm. It just came. I was like, oh, this is so cool. FedEx is in my house, all these things. And that video led me to think, founders want this advice. This is needed. Yeah. This isn't just something that I'm helping here and there for. It was on a national scale. I have hundreds of founders DMing me when I didn't ask them to.
Yeah.
I had people saying, I will pay you to help me with this pitch. I have no idea what I'm doing or what to say. And I made up a rate because I didn't know what or how to charge.
$7,000?
It's so $50,000. I swear I'm worth it. No. Kidding.
Take out a loan.
Yeah. Kidding. But no, it was, for me, that was something that I didn't realize. I took the leap of doing, didn't expect anything out of it. And I still have such a great relationship with FedEx and their team and their founders. And it absolutely changed my life.
The power of one more. That's Ed Milet's, but it's always you're like one interview, you're one thing away from a tipping point in your life. Fill in the blank. Entrepreneurship has taught me blank.
That I am capable of so much more than I plan out in my planner.
I know. I thought you was going to say of what I thought I'm capable of, but here we go. As much as I plan out.
Is that even helpful?
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, what am I doing? How is this even possible? And then I really actually set these foundations up, and I'm being patient and I'm sacrificing. And then it's like, bam, impact. And we've done all these things. I didn't even realize that it was going to be that. I didn't expect like that company, that job offer, right?
Yeah.
So I was scared of refusing it because finally someone's going to tell me what to do. It's a steady paycheck. I get insurance, all those fun things. And in less than a year, I doubled what they offered me. And I almost didn't do it. I doubled it by doing things myself.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't expecting that. I was like, man, if I could just do a little, like, prove that I'm going to be okay at this. And there entrepreneurship goes. I've set myself up. It wasn't luck by any means. I worked my I still work my freaking butt off to
Yeah.
do what I do. And it's like, I'm capable of so much more because I've allowed myself to take the risk of entrepreneurship.
Okay, this is really my last question. I keep saying this, and this is not it. How do you overcome the fear of taking big risks?
You can't think about it too long. You just have to do it. You literally jump off the cliff. Like, if you overthink and if someone told me, they were like, you're going to experience all these things in entrepreneurship, I wouldn't have done it. There's not a shot in hell. Yeah. There's no way that I would have ever gone under those things. But because I just jumped and I was hoping just to learn from it and do things, and I just said, screw it.
Yeah.
Like, let's do it. That's all I have to say to that. It literally, it's scary and I'm doing it, but you can't think twice about it. Yeah. In my gut, could this be something good? All right, risk it.
Yeah. Love that answer. Where can people find you? Market yourself.
So I'm super active on LinkedIn.
Okay.
At Kat, K-A-T Weaver, W-E-A-V-E-R. I post daily pitch tips, fundraising strategies. It's totally my platform. And then just started the Power to Pitch YouTube as well.
Okay.
POWERTOPITCH. And that's also powertopitch.com.
Okay.
So anywhere that you look up Power to Pitch, got all the handles and everything there. But, if you're looking to just kind of start through some things, Kat Weaver on LinkedIn. And then actually, if you're a pre-seed to seed stage founder and you want to get through a winning pitch deck and fundraising strategy, you can apply to work with us and be in our program. And the link is right on powertopitch.com. So it's just a few questions and it books a direct call with myself and my partner, Katie.
Perfect. Quick, easy sales pitch. We love it. I'm going to put all that in the show notes so you all can go check her out, follow her on Instagram. And then last question, Kat, what are you grateful for today?
I am so grateful for all of the mentors I've had and the mistakes that I've made. And the thing that I was saying, I was excited about your gratitude question, is that I have this tiny little journal, and every single morning before I start work, I bullet 3 things that I'm grateful for. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm angry. Sometimes I'm like, why the heck am I doing this? And it absolutely changes my perspective. And so I'm grateful for 3 new things every single day. And it's a huge perspective change, but I would say the mentors and mistakes, because I would absolutely not be here without either of them.
I love that answer. And I'm going to say I'm grateful for the podcast episodes. I mentioned this, but like I talked with my mentor and I feel like it's just, I'm going through a time just with the podcast and everything going on in my life and moving and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, this is why it just takes one more podcast interview to be reminded why you do what you do. So thank you so much for being on. You were awesome.